Hi, everyone. We are so glad that you're here with us today. While we wait for everyone to get settled in, say hi in the chat. Tell us your name, what school you're joining us from. We want to know who's here and where you are coming from. Ooh, we've got a shy group, it seems like. Jump into the chat. Tell us your name. What school are you joining us from? If you don't want to share your name, what school? Hi, Anna. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. Luca, Juan, yes, we're so glad that you're here. Fantastic. University of Missouri, Howard. Hi, Cecilia. Hi, Tyler from North Mac High School. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, we are really, really glad that you are here. Hi, Fabi. Nice to see you. We're so glad that you're here and that you've made time to be here, especially in the busy time of the semester. Classes have gotten started. You're probably getting some of your first assignments under your belt. And thank you for taking the time to invest in your scholarship application process. My name is Beth Francesco. I'm with the National Press Club Journalism Institute here in Washington, D.C. We are the nonprofit organization affiliated with the phenomenal National Press Club, and we provide free professional development support, training, and other learning opportunities to help launch journalists do their best work. Part of that work is creating programs and support specifically for you, student journalists, and we are really proud to administer the National Press Club's scholarship program. The National Press Club this year will award more than $40,000 in scholarships throughout the year, and you are going to get some great insight today from the judges themselves. I'm especially excited because the advice that they're going to share is going to help you with these applications, as well as others you might have in progress or be working on in the future. Things like internships, applications for jobs, or even other scholarships and awards. We are recording the program, and the video will be on our website tomorrow. We have a live transcription closed captioning option available if you'd like to use it. If you are joining us from a desktop or laptop computer, you can enable this at any time by finding the live transcription button in the navigation menu. All you need to do is click the show subtitle and the closed captioning will start. You can also disable it at any point by clicking hide subtitle. As we go through, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of different questions. We hope you will as student journalists. So please share those at any time during the session in the Q&A queue or in the chat. Either is fine. We're going to be monitoring those and integrating them during the conversation. We also will have some time designated toward the end of the program for questions. I want to thank each of our experts and judges for being here with us tonight. As we make our introductions, I hope you'll tell us just a little bit why you enjoy judging the scholarship applications. Alexis, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Since my name's Alexis Garcia, I'm a senior multimedia reporter for Investors Business Daily. And since you all shared your school, I went to University of Texas. So if there's any Texas people out there, welcome. And yeah, I would say this has got to be like one of my highlights of the year. It's always just so fun to see all the work you all produce. It always just blows me away. It's so impressive. So I really, and I think all the other judges on here as well, this is really something we enjoy and always look forward to. So I think that's my highlight.
Karen, you want to tell us a little bit about you and why you love judging?
Sure. So I started out as a journalist many, many years ago and then moved into the PR and strategic communications side. But I'm also tapped into academia, I guess. I teach at Valencia College in Orlando and the University of the District of Columbia. I am actually in job transition right now. I'm leaving the law school at UDC, the University of the District of Columbia, which is a long thing to say, and starting as the Associate Director of Communications and Content at the Design Build Institute of America. So I'll be stepping out of academia, but I really enjoy doing this, and I will continue to teach because what I'm seeing from my students and what I'm seeing from the scholarship applicants is light years beyond what was happening when I was in school. And I went to the University of South Alabama, the University of Florida, and Florida State. all of whom have, the capability to do big things, but it wasn't nearly as transformative as what I see in scholarship applications here. And this is the highlight of my year to do this.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you both. Mark, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you enjoy judging the scholarships?
Yes. Thanks, Beth. I'm Mark Schuff Jr. I'm a senior reporter at Investment News. I'm also involved in a lot of different National Press Club activities, including judging awards. And it's something I look forward to each year because it gives us a window into where the industry is going. And actually it's helpful for me to understand what the next generation wants out of journalism and is trying to achieve with their own educational and career arcs. So really, I for kind of a selfish reason, I want to get a sense of what's coming at us, and also to celebrate that, because so many of these applications, in fact, just about every one of them is engaging and gives us all inspiration about what the future holds for journalism. That's why it's so difficult to choose a winner in each category. And I also like the conversation among the judges. I learn a lot from that as we sort out our rubric and how to apply it to these scholarships, to choosing the winner for the scholarships.
It is hard to go through all of that talent and to see the hard work that people are doing and have to pick just one. So it's a tough job. And I think that your insights today, this evening, are going to be so helpful in helping our participants stand out in that pool of applicants that you see. I wanted to start with just an overview very quickly of the scholarships that the National Press Club offers. There are now 5. There used to be 3, so now there are 5. It's really great. We've added them in the last couple of years. The first is the Scholarship for Journalism Diversity, honoring Julie Hsu. It is a $5,000 scholarship awarded to a high school senior. The purpose of the scholarship is to recruit promising future journalists who are going to bring diversity to American journalism. The award is one that can be renewed up to 3 years at $5,000 a year for a total of $20,000. It's a really phenomenal opportunity. The Richard G. Zimmerman Scholarship is a one-time scholarship for a high school student of $5,000, and it's to help somebody who wishes to pursue a career in journalism. So that's a little bit broader scope for the Zimmerman Scholarship. The Wes Vernon Broadcast Scholarship, which was established just a couple of years ago, supports diversity in the field of broadcast journalism. The scholarship is $5,000 per year, and it's awarded to a student who demonstrates a commitment to career in broadcast journalism. The award can be renewed up to 3 years, just like the Hsu Scholarship. And what's great is that this award is open to any student at any stage of their career pursuing an education in broadcast journalism. And there is a preference by the person who established the scholarship to assist community college students, but that's a preference, not a requirement. And then we have the Dennis and Shirley Feldman Fellowship, which is you have to be going into graduate studies to be eligible. It's a one-time stipend of $5,000 to help defray tuition costs. And then last, and the newest, is the Lewis Scholarship, which was established just last year. It supports a student journalist of color interning in Washington, D.C. It provides free housing for the term of the internship, usually 3 to 4 months, and a monthly stipend for the duration of the internship. The scholarship is valued at $10,000 per semester, and we are offering this. There will be one awarded for each semester, spring, summer, and fall. It's very new, so if you have questions about any of these, especially the Lewis Scholarship, you can feel free to reach out. So that all said, each of these unique opportunities. Oh, I want to welcome Alicia Mundy. Alicia, we started with the judges saying what they love about judging. Can you tell us just briefly one thing that you enjoy about being a scholarship judge?
Oh my God, I can't tell you enough. First of all, I discovered that people are doing things that when I was 18 years old, I couldn't imagine. This is what they did for their summer vacation, like went to Ecuador and saved 1,000 people from hunger. That's what I've learned from some of these applications of people who really didn't wait for everything to come to them. They went out there and just threw themselves into it. I love those applications.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Alicia. We're going to get into the application process here, and we're going to start with one of the pieces of the applications that the judges in our conversation ahead of time identified as really, really important, and that is the essay. Each of the National Press Club scholarship applications calls for an essay response to a prompt specific to the scholarship. For example, the scholarship for journalism diversity honoring Julie Hsu asks the applicant to write a 500-word essay describing their interest in journalism and how they will specifically bring diversity to U.S. journalism, where the Feldman application calls for graduate students to discuss their journalism pursuits and the goal of their graduate studies. So each of the prompts for these are very different. And I guess the question for the panelists, Alexis, you can maybe kick us off by telling us a couple of the things that can take an essay from okay to terrific.
Right, and I'll just start. The personal essay is really the chance to tell your story to the judges, right? And you only get 500 words. It's not a lot of real estate. So I would just say, really jump in, get to addressing the question. I feel like a lot of the really great essays that stand out are ones that really speak to how journalism fits into this person's life or why they want to pursue this as a career, right? We're really looking to see someone who wants to dedicate themselves to this profession. And I think along with that, again, make it personal. I know I can definitely remember when I was, still in high school, college, tend to write very broadly and be very generic, but be specific about your experiences and don't be afraid to tell your story, what interests you, what's something that the moment that you knew that this was for you, give us a little color and insight into your life, because I think that really does separate kind of the essays that are just very general about how diversity is great and we want to see inclusion. Yes, that's all good things, but why specifically are you going to bring that to the field, and why is it so important to you? I think that really, at least from my point of view, really elevates the essays that stand out.
Erin, do you want to add to that? You mentioned something that really resonated, that people can be afraid to talk about themselves. And
Sure.
what have you seen and experienced?
You spend all this time in school being taught how to not put yourself in the story in multiple ways. Even, prior to when you realized you wanted to be a journalist, you were taught, don't say I in essays, don't say you in essays, it's all third person. And so sometimes it can be difficult to center yourself again after practicing so much to not do that. And what happens is a lot of times, Alexis made a good point about writing more broadly, and also there's a tendency to write in elevated prose when we just want to know who you are. And the more grounded and the more authentic the story is, the more likely it's going to resonate with us. Specific experience, brag about yourself. Don't be, ridiculous, but brag about yourself. Tell us what you did and look at your own experiences, how you think other people might respond to them. Say, you've done some cool things. Tell us what they are. Something you told a friend that went, whoa, that's a great idea. We probably think it is too. But if you don't tell us, we will never know that you had this wonderful idea. I'll give a weird personal thing. I actually started at, when I was a graduate student the first time at the University of South Alabama, I started a show that covered our sports teams. And it was the first year they had football. And it was just this tiny little, campus television closed circuit thing. And I, kind of held it close to me. It was really important. But after I left and, throughout the years, it left a legacy that has evolved into Jag Nation TV, which is a local station now. And that was born of what I did. And it has taken me years, even, as someone who knows better, to own that and to own the role I played in building the entire, South Alabama Jaguar Sports Network. So that's been, that's been something that's really stood out to us when we read these is, are you telling us who you are? We have to know who you are. That's what we want to know.
Mark, what are some of
Yeah.
the details or anecdotes in an essay that tend to stand out to you as you're reviewing them?
I like to know what the applicant uniquely brought to an organization he or she has been part of. Like, for instance, did you help create a school newspaper where one did not exist before? That always grabs my attention. That shows a real commitment to a love of journalism. We had examples of that last summer, or last when we reviewed the applications last year. I really like that because that shows a level of creativity and initiative that is a good harbinger for what kind of journalist that person will be. And even if you haven't been entrepreneurial with your journalism efforts, that's okay. I mean, maybe your school already has a paper, but did you, when you joined the newspaper or the television station at your school, did you develop a new beat, or did you report on the beat that you were assigned in a way that brought new stories to your viewers and your readers, and that maybe help change the dialogue in your school? Again, it's this idea of ownership and really trying to make your mark as best you can, which I know is difficult. Well, it's difficult to do for a mid-career, maybe a little beyond mid-career person like myself, and even more so for a student. But to the extent that you can show the difference you've made as best you can at this point in your life in a journalism endeavor that you've been involved with, that captures my imagination.
Well, we've heard a lot about what we should do in application essays that are part of our application. What are some of the red flags? We can't have this conversation without saying what we don't want to see in essays. So what are some of the things that pop up that somebody could have a great story, but maybe they haven't told it the way that you'd like, or maybe they haven't written it as well as they ought to have for a scholarship application? Anybody can jump in here.
Sure, I'm happy to start because one of my the biggest bugbears I have, and I don't know if you've heard that term in 1,000 years, is when someone could say something very simply and they, with 3 words, and they choose 6 and they're all 3-syllable words. You don't want to hit the thesaurus too hard. Be plain, be straightforward. If you say, I want to be this, just say, I want to be this. There's no need to say, I desire to pursue a path that will embark upon. None of that is necessary. And you should know that, as journalists, you probably are like, I know, I hear that all the time. But when we talk about ourselves again, we go back to that. Sometimes we get awkward again. So straightforward, economy of words. You only have 500, so use them wisely and say what you would say if you were standing in front of us. That's one of the big red flags for me, is when it looks like it's just been overly decorated in ways it shouldn't be.
I think one of the best ways to convey what you want to do is actually pointing out to examples, like you grew up hearing about Bob Woodward. you've watched, women journalists become women news anchors. And it always grabs me in essays when I'm reading them, that somebody can point to an example and say, I saw this and this is what I wanted to do. Sometimes it's as simple as a local journalist who broke an important story and I read this and it made a difference here. This is why I want to become this.
Yeah, and I'll just add, of course, make sure you spell check. And, we can also kind of tell, there's a lot of things to apply for. Make sure that you're writing to the specific scholarship. Don't just, cut and paste from other applications. And I think, Alicia kind of hit on a great point. We are journalists, right? You have written stories before. Think about the medium, use those hooks, those leads to really capture us in, use those, show, don't really tell. I think that's kind of what she was saying, paint a picture for us in words, and I think that's some successful essays have done. They said, they've shown us with some really short stories or vignettes of why they want to do this. So I think that's great advice. And yeah, just the general stuff, just, proof your work and again, write to the prompt that you're given.
I would say also a red flag for me, especially for the students who are in college right now and applying for a scholarship. At the stage where you are at this point, a red flag for me is if you're not involved with your campus paper or your campus TV station, and if you're simply taking journalism classes, studying journalism, which is fine. I mean, I endorse that, of course, but it really the best way to learn the craft is by practicing it. And if you're applying for a scholarship and you're not, I mean, if you're at the University of Maryland and you're not writing for the Diamondback, I believe this is the name of the student paper, I would wonder why. Why aren't you there? And so if any of you watching this right now are not involved with a campus news organization, go out tomorrow and look into how you do get a job there. Really, you can't beat the experience, and if it's not part of your background, I wonder why. I don't disqualify people because of that, but I do kind of have to get that question answered as I work through the application.
That's a good point about the experience, and where that can come up is in the work sample that students select, and that's how you can demonstrate your work. That's the next piece of this application puzzle, the work samples. Today's student journalists know how to do so many different things. They have many different avenues to go in producing news content as work samples, including the campus news organizations, also, perhaps their own channels that they've created, different ways that they can produce and distribute work. How can students best showcase their work for a specific scholarship? I think that there are lots of tips this group can give. Erin, do you want to kick us off with some tips on how to display work samples or even select?
So there should be some connection between your essay and what you're telling us and the work you actually have done and that you submit. We understand that perhaps earlier on or even yesterday, you might get an assignment that isn't really in your bailiwick. It's just something you had to do. If you don't feel connected to that piece, unless it is stellar, maybe hold off on that one and prioritize the stuff that connects to the story you tell us. And so if you reference it in the essay, I broke this story about price gouging, and go find that story, make sure we can access it, and that is what you submit. It doesn't mean that it has to be like your essay shouldn't be, I'm going to submit this, here it is. I'm going to submit this, here it is. But if you wax philosophical about what you want to do and how you've been in that space, we want to see evidence that you have. the things you feel really, really powerful telling people about are the pieces we want to see, because that's you at your best. Presumably, hopefully, that's you at your best, and that's what we want.
Several years ago, in one of the applications, when the applicant was pointing out why they were unique, they were at a college, it had a newspaper, it had a sports section in the newspaper, and going back several years, it had never covered anything but the men's sports. And this woman was determined she was going to make a difference. And, if necessary, actually creating a column on, women's sports this month or whatever, just to make sure that nobody was dropping them out, having trouble crawling into the work with all of the football games and everything. And I thought that was it really stood out about how important it was to say the news is for everyone, the news is diverse. And something like that stood out to me.
Yeah, I would definitely say substance over style, right? I think we've seen a variety of work samples come in, and you would be surprised. We get this happens more often than not when a student does write about like this great piece they did, or one of their letters of recommendations references a great piece that they worked on, and they don't submit it as a work sample. We want to see that stuff, but I'll just give an example of looking for substance. Last cycle, we had a student that was a broadcast student. She was at a school that didn't really have a journalism program, and she took it upon herself. I think her cousin was in the industry. She shadowed her cousin, and she got somebody to go out with her, and she created and edited a news package. And it wasn't the most slickly produced, polished piece, no, but it was good, and you could tell that there was that drive there, and she had it. And so I don't want you to be discouraged if you don't have all the fancy editing software, if you don't have a personal website set up with all your clips. Like, that's not really what we look at. We want to see the content, we want to see the substance, right? And again, just make sure when you're uploading or formatting these pieces for that we can actually access them and see them. So I think that would just be my one thing. We really, really look at the substance and not so much the packaging around it.
In the application, one thing that I remember, and maybe this is a topic we're going to get to if I'm getting in too soon, but the letters of recommendation, sometimes you can get, it may be your letter of recommendation, but your teacher has basically described something so generic that you could insert anybody's name, any gender, any age, and there's nothing there. And so, one of the things to look out for is when you're asking for a letter of recommendation, try and encourage that person to say, remember, I worked with you on this, or you taught me how to do this and I did that, because you want it to look as though the person who's writing the letter has actually met you and worked on something with you.
To that end, as a professor, I get asked a lot to write recommendation letters because I do that. I tell them at the beginning, I'm going to remember you and I'm going to remember something about you. So when you're choosing those recommenders, that's a great point. Choose someone, don't choose the nicest teachers or the coach you had most recently. If you have to dig back to somebody you worked with a couple of years ago, don't be afraid to reach out to them, especially if you had a really strong relationship or experience with that person. We want to write those letters for you, and we want to go on and on about how wonderful you are. I still get them from students 3-4 years down the road, and I am happy to write them. So don't be afraid to send that cold email that says, hey, I used to, work with you on this, or I was in your class. We are, as a group, professors, teachers are really receptive to that because we are setting you up. What we want you to do is succeed. And that's one step and one way we can help you beyond the end of our academic relationship with you.
I would say that although it is impressive to submit published work, and the more you're published at a younger age, the more attention grabbing it is to a judge. But think about also submitting at least one work sample that is just straight from you and has not been edited. So if you do have your own blog or website, or can in some way give us something that is the way you filed it, so to speak, that is a powerful thing for me. I like to see that. I like to see your raw copy as it is. I wanted for just a quick aside. I'm one of the editors of the National Press Club electronic newsletter called The Wire, and after many years of editing The Wire, I want to design a T-shirt that says "Show me your raw copy," because that's what it really comes down to. And when the editor clicks on the email with your story in it and is hit with what you have sent, that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And to the extent you can show that in one of your samples, that's helpful.
And I promise I won't be the only one who keeps piggybacking, but we're talking about written pieces there, but the same is true of video packages and audio packages, because it's important for us to know what you did and how you contributed to that story, because we don't assume that you made it tip to tail. We don't. So the roles you played in the creation of that story, it's important for you to include, this is what I did. And this is how, I helped this story come to life. So if you can, the clearer you can be on that, the better we can understand what it is that, you're bringing to the table as the future of the industry.
I think this advice is really great for everybody who's watching. And I would just add a few notes, just because as the Institute takes and files and prepares the applications that you submit for the judges, please follow the upload instructions that are available as part of the application. If judges can't access a link that you've shared, they can't see it. And we're just not able to chase down every one of those broken links. So just know that those aren't considered. And we want to encourage you to, as closely as possible, follow those instructions. And if you have questions about how to submit something, please reach out. You can email us at npcscholarships, that's plural S at the end, @press.org. And we've started diving into letters of recommendation. And I think, one thing that can be a little, challenging is to know who makes a great reference, as Erin pointed out, and who you should reach out to. How early should people be asking for letters of recommendation from folks? I mean, you've written letters, you've read these letters. What advice do you have for really just making the ask for a letter? Students sometimes can be shy about that.
Sorry about this. The sooner you can ask, the better, because, and I will say this, I will fall on this myself. If you don't remind me, I have a million things going on and I may forget to do it. So give me as much lead time, give them as much lead time as you possibly can. And don't be afraid to remind. I like those reminders, because it really is that in my inbox of 9 million things, it has fallen down to 8,999,999. It's not anything personal. It's just that, the world continues to spin. And sometimes, it doesn't stay at the top for some reason. Especially if you're working with people who, their lives are perhaps breaking news, their lives are, handling classes that they're teaching at that moment. If you ask somebody during finals week, you ask a teacher, and it's, their priorities are not with you, and it isn't anything personal. So as soon as you're going to apply, ask, and give as much information as you can about what you're applying for and what your expectations are for the letter. I often have to say to my students, yeah, I'd love to write a letter, but what am I writing it for? How do I submit it? Who do I address it to? What should it focus on? You know, tell me more. And so I will always ask for resumes or, you know, reminders. It's a little awkward to learn how to do this, but don't be offended if your professor's like, can you remind me when you took my class? We see lots and lots and lots of students, but as soon as you say something we remember, then we go, yep, okay, yeah, absolutely. And make sure you choose people who you know will say good things about you. Another thing I tell my students at the beginning is happy to write a letter, but think about whether I'm the right person. How did you do in the class? How did us working together, you know, work out? Was it a good experience for both of us? Because if it's not, that person is not going to be your ally the way you want them to be. So you have allies, I promise. Go to them, and then have backup people just in case somebody says, I can't do it. And don't take that personally. They may not be able to do it, not because of you. I mean, it's very rare that, you know, decent person you've worked with is gonna be like, nah, I'm good, but it can happen. And if it does, you'll want to have somebody ready as a backup to make sure that you get the right number of letters and get them in time.
I feel like one thing that's always helped, at least when I'm asking people, or if I've asked people before, you know, maybe having some bullet points of like, hey, maybe you can hit like, you know, asking them first if they would do this, and maybe just offering that up of like, here's some, you know, bullet points of some things I'd like you to hit in this letter. And again, just like with the personal essays, the letters of recommendation that really stand out are like ones where somebody has written like a very specific example of what you bring to the table, right? I remember last year, there was an applicant whose teacher kind of talked about how they were kind of a latecomer to journalism, and they kind of joined the newsroom late, but they really transformed and were able to like step into an editor role immediately. And you know, those are the kind of examples that we love to see. So I definitely would not be shy like helping people remember too all the great stuff that you've done. So I know everyone is in a time crunch, but definitely don't be shy to just offer the things that you want them to talk about. I know when I've written letters in the past, it helps.
And sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
No, I'm not.
I would just echo that. Try to help your recommender be as specific as possible. Maybe remind him or her of the specific way you stood out in that class, or the project that you took leadership on, that you worked with that person, you know, where you came in contact with that person. Because I guarantee you, everyone who writes a letter of recommendation will say that the person they're recommending is smart and works hard. Every single one of them will say that. So you have to make sure that your recommender explains how you're smart and how you work hard.
Excellent points. There's one other piece that we get questions on when it comes to the application, and then when we can briefly address this and then go into taking some questions from the audience. All of the National Press Club scholarships ask for applicants to demonstrate financial need. And that can be tricky to estimate how you're going to pay for school. We just ask for a best estimate. You know, are you receiving money from grants? Are you planning to get scholarships? Do you have family support? Do you plan to have a job to help? And so we're just trying to get a picture. The judges are trying to get a picture of how this scholarship might fit into your financial plan for your supporting your academic career. Judges, when you're weighing all of these different pieces of the application, where does financial need come in, and how much time should the applicants put toward kind of describing this ratio?
I'll just jump in. I think sometimes it can be a little bit of a tiebreaker. I feel like if we have a couple of applicants that are really even, and I know sometimes if you look on the Google form when you apply, it looks like a little section, and I would say don't treat it as a throwaway section. Like if you really have a need, that's really a chance for you to say like, hey, my family has been struggling and I've been helping support my parents, and this would really help me pay for this. I'm not going to be able to go to school unless I get this. Because I really do think the judges try to take that into consideration, particularly, there are certain scholarships that kind of focus on that a little bit more. But I would say if we have a couple applicants that are pretty even and we see one has maybe more of a financial need, I think that kind of sometimes can tip the scales.
One thing, when people are applying for financial aid and they're trying to point out what they need, I've seen applicants who, just said, and I'm getting, they'll fill out the form and they'll say, are you getting any other support? And they'll fill it in. The best ones and the ones I've said yes to or put in the section of, go forward to the next judging level are the ones who are saying, I am getting $5,000 from Fred Jones's fund, but in order to stay in the school, I need X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm using it for. I'm working this many hours per week, and that's how I'm going to make up the rest of it. And, it's a few extra lines, but I think it makes an impression on the judges that there's the information for you.
I would say make sure that your illustration of how you're financing college adds up to 100%. So if it's 25% scholarships and 25% parents, tell us what that other 50% is too. In other words, if you're going to finance half of your college experience through your own work, through putting yourself through school, let the judges know that for two reasons. Number one, that kind of work ethic and commitment is impressive. But secondly, we sort of know that you could also use scholarship help to reduce the work burden and to give yourself more time to be a student and to concentrate on classes, and that'll help us know that the scholarship could be particularly helpful. So in other words, don't leave out the part that you're going to provide from your own sweat. Let us know the whole thing. Make it add up to 100%, so we see exactly how much you're putting into it and how big the challenge is for you.
And also, I think it's important to note that the financial need piece is never a deal breaker for me, one way or the other. It is often, as Alexis said, a tiebreaker. But if you think, well, I have all this other money, apply anyway. Let me tell you, as we all know here, college isn't cheap. It's not getting cheaper. So you may think you have it covered, and it may look like it when you crunch the numbers right now, but for us, it is not a leading factor in choosing you for the scholarship. It's something that, we do consider, of course, but it's not going to make or break your success in applying.
Very good points. It sounds like the takeaways from all of these tips, I think we could continue talking about this and supporting students all evening. It sounds like some of the takeaways are really to know the unique scholarship that you're applying to self-edit, to ensure your application meets the criteria, that you fit the eligibility, and to follow the specific processes, that this isn't a one-size-fits-all application for each of these various opportunities, just the same as it's different for any other opportunities you may pursue. It also sounds like quality over quantity is important when it comes to application, and that takes time and focus. And you're already on the, getting a leg up on the competition because you're here and you're hearing those fabulous tips. We've covered a lot, and we really want to hear from the folks who are in the audience. We have a question to kick us off. If you have questions about eligibility, if you want to hear from the judges and different, for different topics, feel free to put those in the chat or in the Q&A queue. We're going to kick off with a question from Lauren Barton. who says, she has received 2 recommendation letters for the Julie Schuh Scholarship and submitted them as PDFs as part of her application. The third is supposed to come via email to the Institute through the scholarship email address. Lauren wants to know, what if the teacher forgets to email their recommendation, or if they submit it and have an error in where they're supposed to send it? If a student doesn't have the full 3 letters of recommendation, would that be a disqualifier?
I don't think necessarily, and I know this has happened in the past. We've had applicants whose letters are coming in separately. Sometimes we don't get it. I think what will happen is, if they are in contention, we maybe because there's a couple of stages, and I think if the student moves on to the next round, I think then we'll say, like, hey, you know what, we'll reach out to you, see if you can get this. But we've definitely had in the past where, maybe they had 2 of the 3. We don't hold it against you. But, if it's very competitive and it's, between one person and another, and the other person has like 3 sterling letters, that's where it can maybe hurt you. But I don't think it disqualifies you.
I tend to, if someone doesn't have all 3 of the letters of recommendation, I tend to give the benefit of the doubt to the student, and usually think that maybe the recommender dropped the ball in some way. If you're going to hit a glitch on your application, it's better that it's in the letters of recommendation than in the work samples, because submitting 3 work samples is almost entirely, in fact, I would say it is entirely within your power. So make sure, if we ask for 3 work samples, give us 3, because you can control that.
Also, when you do choose work samples, especially if they link to somewhere, try your best to find out that link isn't going to go away. There have been some, because there's some time between when you turn in the application and when we judge. And so I know that you can kind of tell it wasn't the student's fault. We aren't going to, intentionally submit dead links. We know you're not going to do that. But for example, a couple times we've had student papers who didn't renew domains. And so when we go to it, it's like, this domain doesn't exist. And that's not your fault. So I would even, and I might just be really annoying, but I would even ask the people who are in charge of any link you're going to send, do you think this is going to go away? Is there, another way to do it? Even a cached version of it, so that we can always access it. And I would, this may not be something that could be done, but if you find out that something happened to a story that's been up and that you submitted, reach out to us and let us know, hey, this got taken down. Here's, the new link or something. I mean, I'd be happy to get that email, because I realized that you were staying on top of it. You can't control the internet, but do the best you can to make sure you have do the recon that says, is this going to be a valid thing that I can send in that will still be up in 6 months?
We have a great question in the chat for Blake Neiman, who asks, what do you look for in the diversity aspect? They ask of the West Vernon Broadcast Scholarship, but that could probably be more broadly applied to the other diversity scholarships that we have.
Well, I'll go. I look for not just your diversity in terms of the representation you bring to the field, which can be any, it's broad, diverse. A lot of times the first couple of things we think of gender, we think of race, but there's more to it than that. And I look for not only that, but the voices that you are bringing out in your stories. Sometimes your position in it might be that I can elevate the stories of my community, these diverse voices that don't get heard from. There was an applicant that I really, really liked who was telling stories they were cultural stories of the cultural background she came from that are not people who are represented often in anywhere really. It was a very niche culture. And I found that fascinating. And so the ability to tell those stories and let the people in the story tell them was really, really powerful. So diversity is such a wide thing that I don't want you to look at yourself and go, well, I don't know if I'm diverse. Because what is it about you that brings something different? How do you plan to bring something different that isn't just the same thing we've been hearing since day one? That's how I see it.
And I think your personal essay can help us a lot of framing like how you're defining diversity, right? And again, it's not just we're ticking all these different like boxes of identity. I think you can maybe kind of help us and kind of how you think you're bringing diversity to the profession. And like Erin said, I think last year we had a candidate that she wanted to do more sports journalism because there weren't a lot of women in that particular beat, and she showed us work samples of that and elevating certain voices that you don't really get to hear from so much. So I would just say you can help us kind of understand how you're defining it, and then again making sure that the work samples support your definition, I think would be really helpful.
And I want to add to that too, because you brought up the sports person. I remember a couple of years ago fighting for this student because she was, we look at sports specifically, and she was a very young, I think she showed us stuff from high school. But here is this young Black high school student woman sitting on the desk with two older, more experienced men, and she's holding her own, doing a play-by-play of a basketball game. Her interviews were not particularly strong because you could tell she was still, in the early stages of learning how to do it. But because she was able to tell us and show us, I can be anywhere I want to be, and I can own that space. The fact that she wasn't perfectly polished, and that she wasn't checking boxes, she was actually showing how she would diversify a space that is just not often particularly diverse. I was a sports journalist. It's still not easy for anybody who can identify as a diverse voice.
We have a great question from Fabiana Rincon, who says, can the judges recall a specific moment or technique when you were reviewing an essay that made a candidate stand out as a high quality applicant?
I remember one from last year, and I think I remember judging this because Mark, you made a comment about like, I've never seen this before in all the years judging. We had an applicant who like basically structured it like a feature piece, and his lead was basically like, something about fishing and never learning how to count fish. And it was just like a really like odd way, but it really stood out. And so I think again, like we do, there's different things in this field that we do, but really apply kind of those techniques that you would use for your stories to tell other people's stories, apply them to yourself, like show us with words. That essay in particular just really stood out because you could see so clearly. You start at this scene where this person's fishing and counting fish, and he was a scientist and he wants to be a journalist. And it really kind of like, he started with just a very clear picture, and it was like, oh, that's weird. Like you went from like basically like marine biology and you ended up here, like how did that happen? And he told us. And so I think that's just like really effective. That's one that really stood out.
I remember that guy, he went on it was a research, he was a research assistant, or I believe, and he went out on a study, and he found out that he wasn't so interested in studying the fish, but writing about the fish turned him on. And like you said, Alexis, he conveyed that through an essay that read like a news article, and that was memorable. You can really, in an essay, show us how you can tell a story, and in this case, it's a story about yourself.
So I wanted to, I'm not going to go back too far, but when we talk about diversity too, something that has stuck out to me and has showed up a little more over the last year is thinking about diversity in terms of ability, disability, and that type of space where you're overcoming obstacles that I don't want to say overcoming obstacles necessarily, but whether it is that you think there's a physical limitation and you said, no, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to go out and find this. I'm going to do this. You know, looking at that type of diversity has become really important, because it's important to tell everyone's stories and for everyone to have access to these spaces. So if you can tell that story, we'd like to hear it.
Well, this has all been such fantastic advice and a great peek behind the curtain at how the judging, you know, how you weigh different aspects of the application, how, you know, what you're looking for in candidates that jump out. We want to say thank you very much to each of our National Press Club scholarship judges for making the time this evening to share these tips. It's been a great hour, almost an hour. We appreciate you very much, and not just tonight, but for all of the work that goes into judging these scholarships, because there are really talented students out there. It's hard to make these decisions. And we want to thank all of the participants, the students who've made time to take these lessons, soak them in, and put it toward their applications. We're going to send a follow-up email with a video recording of the conversation, as well as a tip sheet from the program. So you will have some of these tips built into an easy to use list to help you check against your application before you submit it. Our first round of scholarships are, the deadline is coming up on February 15th. So it's around the corner. We have a couple more weeks to get those applications in. Thank you for making the time to be here. And we wish you all well and hope to see you at an Institute program soon. If you have any questions about any of the scholarship eligibility or processes, please again, email us at npcscholarships@press.org. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great night and good luck.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.